Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. So for some of you, it's your first artist talk, or in our gallery anyway. And so I'm going to lay out kind of how these work a little bit so you kind of know what we're going to have going forward. Erik has agreed to keep the talk around 25 to 30 minutes. We don't drop the mic if he goes long. But he's offered to say that we can. But the main thing that I ask that all of you do is give us your full attention. If you have to, underscored, have to leave early, please do it in the most courteous way. Kind of find your way to the door, close the door behind you instead of letting it slam. Just all the typical things of being courteous to the speaker. Silence your phones. If you haven't done that, please do that now. Upcoming events or exhibitions in the space. About a month from now, you will, in this space, will be the faculty biennial exhibition. And so it's your opportunity to come and smirk and make negative remarks about your professors in the studio. And then April 6th, Matthew Mosier is going to be here. His work explores the intersections of art, computer programming, and critical making, resulting in immersive installations and interactive sculptures. So you're going to see kind of handmade sculptures, but also 3D printed sculptures with both chemistry created and faux patinas addressing those kinds of issues. It will be a very interesting show. And then on May 8th, the senior thesis exhibition. And that is an exciting time for all of us who are our seniors who have been working on their thesis body of work for a year, hypothetically, who have gone through the rigorous steps of thesis committee and oral defense. They will have their exhibition celebration on the 8th. And I hope you make room in your calendar for all those events. We'd like to have you here. Before we get to tonight's visit, I'd like to bring your attention to what we call the Knot Gallery. It was a small student art gallery just off the hallway. Second-year student Taylor Polonsky is exhibiting their work in there. Taylor's made quite a presence since they joined the department. With a recognized studio practice and commitment, their involvement with the studio art club called the Art Guild, and their participation in things like the student juried exhibition, open houses, admission events, all the things that we look for in a stellar art major, and they certainly are one of those. So their exhibition is going to be up. We sync that with our visiting artists. So next month we'll have another student exhibition in that space. But I want to make sure that you take time tonight, or at least in the next couple of days, to visit their work. They put a lot of work into getting an exhibition up, and I hope you will join me. Taylor, are you here? Stand up and be recognized. Nice work, Taylor. Congratulations. Yep. Okay. All right. Erik Waterkotte is an associate professor of print media in the Department of Art and Art History at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. His creative research utilizes graphic and mixed media to create layered exhibits exploring representations of belief and ideology. Waterkotte has exhibited his artwork both nationally and internationally, with recent exhibitions at University of Alberta, Canada, the Appleton Museum of Art, the Landmarks Art Gallery of Texas Tech. His work is part of several collections, including the Wiseman Art Museum at the University of Minnesota and Purdue University galleries. Waterkotte has been the recipient of several awards and residencies, including the affiliate artist residency at the McCall Center for Art and Innovation. He's been a visiting artist at universities like Elon throughout the United States. He received his MFA from the University of Alberta and his BFA from the Illinois State University. We have a large range of submissions every year. We put out an international call for submissions. Last year we had almost 200, and so it's a difficult decision process for us to whittle it down to just 6 exhibitions or 5 exhibitions. Erik met the mark on what we were looking for: professionalism, contemplative work. In that is in the description is a interest and a willingness to work with our students. So Erik came in and has spent all afternoon critiquing our seniors and my advanced painters. I will share with you all the tears that they shed upon me in the next day of class, but we thank you for your effort, and it's been a joy working with you. Your exhibition's incredible. Your partner's work, your gallery assistant work was great. I think we got this up in record time, thanks to all your efforts and professions. Yes. So, no further ado, please welcome Erik Waterkotte.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you to my friends and colleagues who made the trip from Charlotte and Winston-Salem as well. Thank you to Michael and Priya for their help with the exhibition, putting everything up, and my partner Anya Kanar, who's not here, and my other colleague Matt Belcher. So I tried to get a crew together to bring in, because Friday was the day to do it before the storm hit a few weeks ago. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the work I put together. I want to be respectful of the time and not make anybody too bored, so I might skip around a little bit. The name of the exhibition is Ghosts Over Vestiges. Vestiges meaning a trace of something, so it's kind of redundancy. I like being able to play around with titles and language as part of the creative process. And thus a title like saying my work is Apocalyptic Glamour, and hopefully I'll explain that a little bit to you as well. As Michael mentioned, one of the main things of interest in my work is religion and belief, how we believe, what we believe, how those things have formed. I think it's incredibly creative when you look through, human history and see what we used to do, what we still do today. I think belief is really one of the manifestation of the creative arts. I'm not making this up off the top of my head. Someone like Carl Jung explored that idea of creativity in humanity, how it illustrated shared consciousness. He made a career out of it. You might have heard of him. This is a quote. This is a picture from Carl Jung's Red Book. If you haven't, if there's a bibliography for the talk, that's on the top of the list. The Red Book by Carl Jung, they published a facsimile of it. Your library probably has one, so it's actually like this huge red book. But it's an illustrated manuscript that he did over decades. He had very specific directions about releasing it after he died. We had to wait, decades until he had passed for this to actually get published. But it's a beautiful book. It's his own mythopoetic idea. And from Carl Jung, the idea of like the mythopoetic imagination, as well as like the idea of archetypes through shared consciousness, is something that's really of interest to me when thinking about my artwork and looking at human belief. Archetypes, by archetypes what I mean is like the shared stories and ideas that we have through generations. So the major example is the story of like Plato's cave. That idea of shadows and fire on the cave wall showing this like additional reality to human beings, that's an archetype that's existed. That's a story that's existed for most of human history. So looking at similarities through like religious cultures and how things are represented is really interesting to me. I grew up Catholic. I think that's part of why religion fascinates me. There's a lot of dress up and ritual in Catholicism. And seeing things like being scared of the horrific crucifix that's in 3D at the front of the altar growing up, and then seeing that occur in this much different way in schools of Tibetan Buddhism, where the idea of the grotesque or body horror is a way to show you that the vessel is like temporary, right? So there's a whole school of thought in Tibetan Buddhism meditation where you try to kind of scare yourself or get yourself to think really directly about your mortality. So you're supposed to picture yourself being pulled apart. There's a lot of great books and diagrams on that study too, if you're interested. I got a chance in 2023 to be an exchange faculty at the University of Wrocław in Poland, and seeing, having the benefit of being in a different place for 6 months was great. I was there over the summer for Corpus Christi, and each parish in the neighborhood does their own walkthrough. And the pictures and the banners were really influential. I still can't stop thinking about this kid who had to carry around this like old school transistor kind of thing so the priest could chant. But yeah, this is not a new design and didn't look terribly ergonomic for him either. So I kind of got interested in the idea of religious banners and found this Polish artist's work, Władysław Hasur, and he kind of did a non-denominational version of this in the 70s, titled the Apple Blossom Festival, and then hired the Salvation Army or Scout Band to parade through the town, and he did a kind of non-denominational version of the Corpus Christi that you saw. So then something like that directly influenced works like this, which although they're framed are presented as these kind of stretched banners. The idea of sacred spaces and sacred objects has been of influence to me, especially after I found out my great-great-grandparents, after my father passed away, I got the genealogy book, which I never looked at until, I'm middle-aged and he's gone. And so I found out that my great-great-grandparents, they moved from Germany. They were actually Catholic exiles. So when the state religion changed over officially, they moved briefly to the Netherlands to get married from Germany and then moved to the United States, and they set up along the Mississippi River in Quincy, Illinois, and he actually built several churches, and one of them still stands in Quincy, Illinois. That Quincy is right on the Mississippi River. Right across the river is Hannibal, Missouri, where Mark Twain grew up. So at the time they were there, this was a bit, mid-late 1800s, it was a big time to be there. So I visited this place and took a photograph of it and wanted to kind of make my own wallpaper of his history. These are some other shots from the show. So I like to try to explore printmaking. At this time, I was trying to think of it as an installation kind of idea. The idea of finding sacred spaces in strange areas is of interest to me as well. So this is a series of prints I made that are backlit. So they hang off and they have their own kind of LED bar behind them. And they're acrylic transfer and fabric, screen printed fabric on plastic, on Mylar. And these are all photographs from the salt mine, I'm going to butcher it, but let me see if I can find the name. Wieliczka salt mine? Wieliczka salt mine, outside of Krakow. That's my colleague Mark, who brought me to Wrocław, Poland. So in the salt mine, in order to promote working and long hours, they actually built a Catholic church inside of the salt mine, and that's what the pieces were based on. In thinking about religion and objects, destruction of things is also an important part of human history. Whether you think that's good or bad, let us know. But we had Dr. Preziosi from UCLA. He came and did our art history symposium, and I just saw the title of the talk, Making Strange Art, Religion, and Terror, and wanted to go. But his whole preface was that, in destroying objects of religion like jihadists are doing, they're validating their blasphemy. So in these kinds of activities, once we get into these objects, right, there's this whole weird kind of interaction where you can and can't, and destroying different spaces has been a tool of military occupations and everything else. But what I find fascinating is, how much more we know, the extent to that these things have gone on through history, and then these little traces where things are left, like these cave holes from the large Buddhist sculptures in Afghanistan. I think those were in Afghanistan, right? So this is one of the pieces in the show. It's back in the left corner there. It's one of the first books I made, and I wanted to take an existing book. I was inspired by, current issues of conservatives and trying to rewrite history in terms of our own nation. So I wanted to take something that exists, and we all know it very well, The History of Western Philosophy by Bertrand Russell, and take that book, a single copy of that book, pulp it down, and remake the book into this kind of absurdist set of like picture book glyphs and things. So it's open for interpretation. It's meant to be something that you recognize was something else, and now the language is being rewritten, which I do think is kind of, there's attempts to do that right now, so we should be thoughtful of that. These are some other shots of that. The glyphs are meant to be very primal and kind of open-ended. So that's a boat or a bowl and a chopstick. That's just a head, right? So thinking of things in very simplistic terms. This idea of writing over or rewriting things, I've been more and more interested in as I learn about paper making, and I seek to like incorporate recycled materials into my practice. The recycling actually comes more from like an interest in sustainability, but then I like the idea of like I had all these old dictionaries and HTML manuals, and as long as the paper isn't like super plastic or glossy, if it's got a matte finish to it, you can usually let it soak for a day or two in water, and it'll start pulling apart, and you'll actually be able to make another sheet of paper. And those old book pages that appear gray, if you like boil them, kind of cook them down with some salt, they'll turn into that like bright yellow manila fiber again. It almost looks kind of manila-y. So this is a print that I made. It's about 18 by 24 inches using red clay, sifted red clay to print on it, and it's HTML manuals and Merriam-Webster's dictionaries. I found some old work from 2007 that I just thought, I always like to see that as a student. So this is 2 years from grad school. All of my grad school stuff is still on slides, or else I'd show you that. And luckily, all the stuff from undergrad disappeared magically. But I always liked, I found it, and it was a pleasure. But this is some of the work that I was doing. They're a little more science fiction-y, but still based on the idea of ruins and vestiges and things like that. One of the artists that I saw, in my professional career that's been really influential is Dario Robledo. He makes these great sculptures where the materials themselves are so incredibly loaded. And this idea that you go into a museum and then each like didactic is like this poetry of different materials. I didn't even care if he made it up or not. He's got pieces where he supposedly collect the air of, dying elderly people into these bottles. We don't know if there's really their breath in there or not. It doesn't matter. It's, it's like reading a novel in a paragraph. But I found this really, really inspiring. So I started out doing kind of straightforward prints on paper, and during the pandemic, trying to get materials, trying to think like, what the hell am I doing? Which I'm sure a lot of people thought about. I decided to try to like clean the slate and start, and this is all that work since then. So this is the first time I'm kind of sharing it all. So I'd love to hear what you think. I decided to shift gears so I wasn't just using up things. I wanted my artistic practice to involve some kind of kind of cycle or give back, where I'm trying to make something in the artistic practice that either supports or helps the environment, or I'm not, ordering paper from a mill in Europe to be shipped all the way here, or I'm trying to make my own ink. And the first paper I made was a flax paper, a translucent flax paper. I worked with a colleague of mine to learn paper making, and then just kind of started taking classes at this conservatory, paper making conservatory in Cleveland, Ohio, called the Morgan, which if you're interested in bookbinding or paper making, it's a great facility. And they have internships and residencies and workshops. The work on the wall here is part of a larger series of these like memorial heads. I learned how to silk screen paper pulp. And my father had passed away recently, and I was really doing like most academics do. I tried to study like how to deal with my own grief, and tried to read for the 15th time the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and got a little further, but tried to think about like how we deal with loss. And I happened to go to Savannah to the Bonaventure Cemetery. Anybody been to Savannah, Georgia? Yeah. So the Bonaventure Cemetery, definitely on your list if you go. Also, there's a serial killer collection museum now in Savannah too, so you can juxtapose the two ideas of death. But these were a particularly big memorial statue of an angel, and through the silkscreen process, I tried to distort it in different ways. This is a picture of the Falls Reservoir in North Carolina. I'm interested now in kind of this idea of making work about particular like places or spaces. This is, I had never really been, someone as engaged with nature until we, couldn't go out anymore. And so during the pandemic, I started to look for places to go and be outside or paddleboard. This is a great spot if you don't know about it. It's really amazing, and I like to go there and just try to explore. And it's this great mix of industry. The hydroelectric dam here dates back before World War II, so it's kind of an interesting area and kind of in between Charlotte and here. And I've made this piece as a direct result of that. One of the people I go out with is a colleague, Jeff Murphy, and he was shooting all these GoPro things on the 3D GoPro. So I had him make the graphic, and I made the paper and screen printed it. I like to try to collaborate as much as I can. I've collaborated with Mark as well. I'm collaborating with other colleagues, but it's an inspiring way to kind of keep the creativity flowing. This is another piece I made of the Falls Reservoir. This was for a project that I did, a print exchange, and you make so many when you make like a print exchange because you got to do like 15 or 20 prints. And so I usually keep them around, and then I'm like, oh wait, now it's a collage of these two things together. So I had some pieces. I had also printed it the wrong way at one point. So I, assembled this kind of diptych of those pieces. And this time I tried to really be conscious, like inspired by Dario Robledo, of the materials. So the paper is made from maps of North Carolina. They've been pulped down kind of more minimally, so you can see like little clips of the graphic in there. And then the ink, the material is from there. I gathered branches from there and then made charcoal. So everything's like taking a lot longer, but the materials I'm more invested in. And then I'm learning, like, YouTube is teaching me all kinds of things, like how to make charcoal, how to, mill down earth, like dirt and stuff into pigment. This is one of the books in the show. It's called Earth. I bound it. How am I doing on time? Okay. I only show this because it's got gold pages, end papers. So it's got solid gold end papers. And what I want to happen is that there can be like pictures like from the glowing suitcase which is a tool from Hollywood. So if anybody wants to look through it later on, when it's out and lit, please, I'd appreciate a John Travolta style picture. The idea of books fits, if you start studying like either bookmaking or the history of paper making, they both kind of go hand in hand because of this one guy, Dard Hunter, whose museum is in Chillicothe, Ohio. He's a kind of scholar from the arts and crafts movement who started to study the history of papermaking because in the 40s and 50s, I think, is when he was studying it, because the artistry of it kind of stopped during well, it never really became an artistry, I guess. It always stayed like a kind of labor craft kind of thing, but it never became its own medium until much later, until the 1950s and 60s. Now it's in the wheelhouse of like the graphic arts, but I'm kind of interested in the fact that it never had its heyday. So before like the 1950s, it was like you had paper mills making paper, you bought paper as an artist, but your skill set wasn't necessarily in that. So the fact that there's this gap, same with bookmaking. Bookmaking became industrialized and kind of commercialized even before the Industrial Revolution in a way, right? So those crafts as an art form kind of got lost, and so some of this I had to study and learn with other artists who were much younger than me. When I was in Poland, I worked with Ioannis Anastasio and Majka Dokudowicz, who run a little press in Wrocław, Poland. It's a press, a book, a bindery, and they make paper as well. So I had already kind of started this direction when I went to Poland, and then luckily ran into them, and they introduced me. There's a historical UNESCO paper mill south of Wrocław, and you got to see the whole thing. What's interesting in terms of paper making is the whole enterprise is built around like a certain effect. So your dry box is actually the whole roof. So they would throw the paper, they had all these, kind of like the grading system up there, but a little bit wider, and they'd throw all the paper over the grates and then open up these big vents and just let the air flowing through the roof, that would dry everything. Then the mill and everything, that you can't see it, but there's a river carved really tightly that flows around the building. That's where your wheel is on the other side. So this idea that you have to build this whole building electricity around this. And then they had like some of the old tools of it. This is actually one of the beaters from as it became more industrialized. And that stays outside, which is a shame. But it's really fascinating to see. So that was really compelling. A big part about the show conceptually for me is this idea of ecological grief. One of the people, the thinkers that I'm really inspired by are writers like Anna Singh and Donna Haraway, and they talk about ways to kind of deal with this, kind of engage with it, but this, was something that has been around for a while, and of course, when it happens to me, I want to try to figure out why I'm feeling this way. This actually, ecological grief, they think kind of goes back to this naturalist Aldo Leopold, and he wrote this great kind of essay about geese, and I won't, this is just a clip of it, but he was a hunter. He would hunt geese, but then he also wrote about don't build another fucking golf course in Iowa, please, because I'm not going to have any of these beautiful birds to go out and experience nature with. And at the same time as I was reading that, there was this whole incident. There's been incidents with our geese on campus at UNCC, and the art department is not for it, all right? We want the geese to just stay and be left alone, and every time facilities management comes through. Well, this last year, I decided to finally file an official complaint because it's a federal law to let a bird nest, let a goose nest. So this bird was actually right outside our ceramics studio. The students loved it. We all loved it. We didn't have any bad interactions with it, and they still came by and like pushed it out. And that's very, very tragic. And that's, to connect with that is something I've learned from teaching, like, you know, most of your, meaning the students here, your generation, like being able to express that and care about that. So there's some great ecological grief artwork too to be influenced by. One of the pieces is still really beautiful and tragic to me is the Great Silence by Alora and Calzadilla, a collaborative group, and they did it with the writer Ted Chiang. It's about a 15-minute video. You can watch it on Vimeo or YouTube. And the short story has been published. Ted Chiang wrote Arrival, the short story that Arrival was based on. But this whole piece is about the parrots that live underneath the Arecibo radio tower in Puerto Rico, which is now, it collapsed in on itself now. The parrots, I think, are okay. But this idea that you're reaching out to try to find an alien voice that's never going to come back to you. So they talk about the Fermi paradox, which is that there's supposed to be intelligent life, but we're not hearing anything back. And the parrots are the ones saying, we're here, you know, you can talk to us. And we're halfway intelligent, right? Like we know more than you think we do. So trying to find works that have essentially this kind of like what Donna Haraway calls this symbiotic kind of experience, where the art itself is exchanging or serving a larger function. In the work, you know, trying to collect garbage in my neighborhood, make that into some kind of art or distill that, using recycled materials, making my own ink, trying to find ways to build that into the practice. And that's part of the like speculative thinking I'm doing is like this idea of the apocalyptic glamour. So this is a work, I've looked at this piece multiple times when I lived in Minnesota. This is in the Walker Art Museum collection. And for some reason, when I was living there, it was out all the time. And I still love it. It took me a while to find it in the online collection, but it's Ravine Neuschwander, Brazilian artist, and it's Chinese rice paper eaten by snails, and then to get the offset, right, of the delicate paper, it's mounted onto a colored paper board. But in the work, when you actually see the work, it's delicate and beautiful and lacy, but then there's also like snail trails in there, so you get that kind of grossness when you get close, which is pretty cool. One of the things Haraway talks a lot about is getting comfortable with the gross, and that's part of paper making, and part of what I've tried to do in my recent work is get more comfortable with like the gross. She talks about it, Haraway talks about it as the humus, getting into the earth. So I have a love-hate relationship with our compost pile. And one day I went out there and it had become something else because I don't take care of it or rotate it. And it was super hot day. And if I could play the audio on it, it was making a lot of noise. But I was just in the right mood and I was like, oh my God, this is like beautiful. So I sat there and filmed it until the little flies, the mayflies, started flying up my nose. But it didn't smell, but it looked juicy, as you can see. So that's kind of where I'm at with the show, and my thinking is, you know, there's still religion and particularly doom in there, and I'll show a reference. Actually, let me jump ahead. So I didn't know this term existed, doom painting, which is the English came up with that as a way to generalize Last Judgment paintings in medieval churches. But if you look up doom painting, this Stefan Lochner painting from the mid-1400s is like your quintessential painting. I made tons of stencils of that, and you see that in multiple pieces. So as that's something I'll do. I like this idea. I like these figures. I want to kind of distill them and play with them. I'll make something like stencils, so you see little devils and things in the works in some of the recent pieces. This is an amazing piece of outsider doom art called the Christian School, which no longer exists. It was built by a guy named Raphael Plessia, and he was thinking of a school as an art installation. So the idea was, as you walked in the basement of this building, he worked in cement and chicken wire, and he dug out the basement of the building, and you start in the basement and you're in hell, and you walk along this guy's life size down there, colored lights, and then you walk up to the first floor and you're in purgatory, and then you go up to and I just thought it's one of the most amazing pieces I've seen. Now that it's demolished, the building, I'm trying to put together like a small book or zine about it, but definitely doom painting-esque. So thinking about doom painting and thinking about the Donna Haraway and Anna Singh, what I'm trying to think of is making a working method in the apocalypse. And what I started to think about is like how we aestheticize things. So apocalyptic glamour is kind of like trying to think about embracing the dirtiness, embracing the grit, working with gross things, maybe wearing animal furs and driving a mock-up car and carrying a shotgun like Mad Max. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome was very influential. This, I still think, and you can see this was influential to like Robert Kirkham, who does Walking Dead. Like, we all still think this is what the apocalypse is gonna look like, but it's not. It's not, right? But it's very influential, and it was very scary to me at the time. So thinking about apocalyptic glamour as a response to ecological grief, trying to embrace just new ways of thinking and art. So this is the guy, Lee McDonald, who builds beaters. He's one of the few left in the US to build pulp beaters for paper making. The other guy is older than him, and he's also retiring. So pretty soon we're not going to have anybody who really knows how to build these necessarily anymore. But this is back in the day, in the 90s or early 2000, 2011. He built a beater for this artist, and she decided to power it with her bike instead, Mary Hart. So thinking about labor differently and how we make art, thinking about how we collaborate differently. This is a piece by Diana Scher. This is in the MIT Museum, and it's grass grown into a paper. So the paper is made by taking a grassroots system and kind of, instead of letting it do that, let it do that. So she built this little template for it to follow, which is all made out of paper. So, I mean, this isn't Mad Max, but it kind of is, you know, in a way, if you've seen Mad Max. So that's really this big installation piece in the back, the reliquary for the Capitol scene, is this attempt to kind of do that. It's a mix of sticks and roots and bones, as well as found plastic. Most of the found plastic is either black in appearance, or it's been painted black for aesthetic purposes. But trying to create this kind of space of uncertainty and deal with those things more head on. And one of the things a friend of mine suggested, because I was like, yeah, I'm just picking this stuff up and I'm a cool artist. And then one time something leaked out of a piece of plastic that I picked up, because a lot of it by our house there's a lot of car wrecks in Charlotte. I don't know if you've been to Charlotte, but people don't know how to drive there. So depending if you're by campus, if you're by UNCC, there's just car graveyards all over the place. And so I picked something up which I thought looked cool, and then it leaked on my hand, and I'm like, Jesus, I need to be wearing gloves while I'm doing this. But it didn't stop me, like Mad Max. And thank you very much. That's the end. Thank you.